All right, we're back with our charades game as we get into 2.3. You'll see one of the things I added is where it says word or phrase is acted out. I made it orange, and I just did that so I could point out that there are changes being made on the app over here. One of the things I forgot to do with the last video, so we're going to start with going over this, is we forgot to check our work. So we made all these procedures. We'll go to our blocks. We made all these procedures over here, shorten up our code. You can see how slim it is now. And the one thing we forgot to do is make sure that it actually works. So the things that we made sure worked, we played with the start timer before the game started. Let's make sure that still works. Yep, still counting down. I'll hit reset. I'll start the timer. I'll hit reset again, and it sets to 30. And don't forget, skip next word. We should be losing a point. So that's working. So everything is working right. We didn't check the timer, but I'm pretty sure if I put on the sound, we'll hear in about 25 seconds that the timer is working properly. So our app is getting there, and everything is working the way it should. And it looks like I'm going to have to reconnect. Again, I've had to do it actually a couple times off the video. But the other thing I want to show you too is on our event handler, I've highlighted everything that we were able to create and get working properly. The one thing I forgot to do, there you go, it is working. The one thing is the reset timer button. I want us to go back and look at that. Here's the reset timer button. So in the reset timer, when we shortened up that procedure, what were all the things that were in the reset timer? The reset timer set the global time back to 30 seconds. It set the label back to the way it's supposed to look, and it made our clock false so it wouldn't reset. So if we look at the reset timer piece, does it do everything? Yes, it does. So there was actually one more that we were able to complete. So now you can see the big thing we have to do is the word phrase buttons, add word phrase to the skip button, and then when devices senses shaking, these are the other things that we can add that we're going to have to create today. So a whole new 2 buttons are what we're going to have to add to our blocks to make sure it works. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to refresh my app. I'm going to refresh my tablet. And I'm going to go to Connect AI Companion. I'm going to pull my tablet up and read the QR reader. It's going through its thing. So you can see even I have to do it every now and then. We'll make sure it pops up properly here. And then we will get started with building. There we go. So by now you already watched the video about lists and talked about the different indexes that we have to be able to follow. And you know that we're now going to be focusing on that model layer. Something else you may need to add when we're getting closer here to your final project. So now that we're logged into our App Inventor, we're going to go over into the blocks. So let's go over here to blocks. And we're going to go into the list drawer, and we're going to look at all the different lists that are possible over here. Now, when we look at lists, there's a bunch of different lists we can create, but one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to actually make a list. We're going to take those ideas I told you at the end of last video, and we're going to put those into a list. So let's make a list. Well, before we even do that, we have to set a variable that we're going to connect to this. So let's go down to variables, and we're going to initial a global variable that will click to this. And let's call this word phrase, phrase, list, last, word phrase list. Now remember that 10 words or 10 different actions or movies or TVs, shows, or all those things that I had you create? We're going to add those in here. Now you can go ahead and add more if you want later, but let's first start on how we can make this list. Right now there's only 2 indexes, so this is index 1, this is index 2. We're going to go to the little settings or gear system. We're going to grab an item, and I'm going to make a new index 1. So here's 1, 2, 3. I'll add 1 down here into index 4. And all we really need to worry about now is that we have 10 indexes. So we have 5 there. We have all 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a 10. So now we have our 10 items in our list, and we can see if we went right down the list, index 1, 2, 3, and so on, all the way down to 10. What we have to do now is we have to make a blank spot that we're going to fill in for these. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and go up to text, and we're going to drop a blank one in here. To make it a little quicker, I'm going to copy and paste, and we're just going to connect these together. Oops, I made one too many. That's fine. I'm actually not going to delete it. I'll leave it off to the side. You'll see we have a warning down here now because something's not connected, but I want to leave it there in case I'm going to add more. And I probably will add more just because that's what I do. All right, so in my list, you can pause and make your list of the things that you have and start typing them in, and then come back. Or you can watch me put mine in as you put yours in. We'll just kind of walk through them. So first thing I thought was, let's talk the Blues Brothers is one of my favorite movies. I'm going to put that in there. How about something funny to act out? Well, I got a beard, so I'm going to say washing my beard. That'd be funny to act out. Another good movie I like when I was a kid, Mary Poppins. I think that would be funny to watch people act out. If you don't know the movie, watch it. Maybe a famous musician. How about Taylor Swift? Swiftie? No, just Swift. What would be interesting of an action to watch? I don't know how you would act this out, but I'm going to say reading quietly. I'm doing all capitals. I might as well do that. QU. Reading quietly during class. How do you act that out? I don't know. Driving a car. Let's see. You could act out driving a car. Let's see. Let's think of a wrestler. You could act out someone from the WWE. How about Daniel Bryan? That'd be fun. Trying to think of something else I could put here. How about eating? Let's make it very specific. Eating. What's this? Oh, emulator went out again. Eating a filet-o-fish. That seems pretty specific. I don't know how you would act that one out. Let's see. Something else that would be fun. One of my favorite AC/DC songs. AC/DC's TNT. How are you going to act that out? That would be interesting. And I don't know. I could think of a TV show, something that I know is pretty popular on Netflix, Fuller House. I'll put that there. Now, if I want to add more, I can always go here to the gear thing and then add more if I wanted to. And the nice thing is we should all have a different list, so it'll make it more fun when we all have our own list of 10 to 15. So if I do more, I can get those later. Okay, so we now have our list put into our program. We're going to find a way to incorporate that list a little bit later. And so we now have to think about accessing that list. So we have our list set up. We have to create a code to access those items from the list randomly and display them. So we're going to have to drag out a word phrase button .click. Something that was already created before is a word phrase button and .click. Let's pull that out and put that right under our word phrase list. So what component should we use when we want to display this text on the screen? We're going to want to use a label component to be able to get this working properly. So let's go to our item label, which if we look at our designer, the item label is highlighted right here. I made it orange. So we're going to work with that box. That's where we're going to want to display all our words. So we're going to go to item label, and we are going to want to pull out the text. So let's set item label.text. Oops, drop it in there. And now, what are we going to want to pull from the item label that drops into this box? What we want to pull is this list. So let's go to list, and we can have it go down the list from beginning to end, or we can just have it be random. So let's just pick a random one for now. So I'm going to put a random list, and we're going to have to get this list from the word phrase list. So this is where we have to go back in, and we're going to have to create, or we already have it, already created is a globalization. So let's go and get a variable, and let's take the word phrase list and connect it. So now what should happen, if working right, when we say click here for word phrase, it should go ahead and add a word into our orange box. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to refresh. I'm going to refresh my app since we saw that it kicked out. A lot of movement going around here. It's throwing me off. So I'm going to put in the QR code. Wait for the emulator to connect. Someone's grabbing a bunch of stuff off the table right now as I'm doing this. And now if I click word phrase list, it should show us a word. Now, as we can see, it's very hard to see that word. So I forgot I have to go back to item label and change it to no background color. And now when I go to read it, click a word, now we can read it. There's Mary Poppins. Click another word, Daniel Bryan, the Yes Movement, eating a filet-o-fish, and so on. So where else should this pop up? Where else should it be showing us a word? Well, it should show up when we click skip next here. It doesn't, so we're going to have to add that eventually. So what that tells me, kicked out again, this is great. What that tells me is I'm going to have to use this line of code a couple times. So why not make this a procedure right away? It'll make things a little easier. So I'm going to go to procedures. I'm going to get another do. And right under here, I'm going to call this picking phrases. I'm going to create a procedure for picking phrases. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this right down in here. Get rid of this word phrase button code. And let's make it real simple by just putting a picking phrases box in there. Go ahead and do that. Now we can take our procedure we created and kind of slide it over here with our other procedures. Kind of put it off the side. Now we know whenever we need to do a picking phrases thing, we can put it right there. That will make things go really well. So before we move on, let's go to our event handler. Now we created a word phrase button. A word phrase button. And what have we put in there? Well, now it picks a word. Okay. So the word appears there. So let's go ahead and put that in there. And the other thing we have to put in the word phrase button is if we're clicking the word phrase, that must mean that we're able to add a point. So when we click this, we want to be able to make an add a point. We know we have the accelerometer, but we can also use this to get our game going. If we don't want to use the accelerometer, we could decide to use this as a point maker, or we increment the score. So why don't we go to procedures and add an increment score there too. So now I can do two different things. And we can test that in a little while and make sure it works. But now we're able to do multiple things with our buttons, and things are starting to get put together. This is kind of nice. So the other thing that we have to do now is we have to go ahead and think about, word phrase button. We got to start the timer. So on the word phrase button, we can also use that as a start timer. And that's where we could include it. But I think what I'm going to do to make things a little simpler, we already have a start button. Why make it too confusing? Let's just say we've completed our whole box. Awesome. And now the start timer button, this has been created. So now we're starting to knock things off our event handler. In the skip button, we got to show a new word or phrase when we click the skip button. So let's go to the skip button before we move on to anything else. And in our skip button, we have two procedures. We have the decrement score. We have the score label score piece there as well. So let's also include in the skip button the picking phrases. So whenever we have to click skip, it's not only going to lose a point and update the score, it's also going to pick a new phrase for us. So that's good. We can just use a procedure. How quick is that? So now we have another block all completed. So now all we have left is the shaking. And if we remember from the shaking, it has a specific word that we call it, and that's called the accelerometer. So to help us, put accelerometer there as a hint word. Now, do we have the accelerometer already created in our components? Doesn't look like it. So we're going to have to go down to sensors, and we're going to have to drag an accelerometer sensor onto our screen. And remember, that's a non-visible component, so it drops down here. Now let's set up our properties for this so it's all set properly. We're going to want the accelerometer enabled. That makes sense. We got to make it work. Let's set the minimal interval. So this is every millisecond. Let's set it to respond to 2,000 milliseconds. And let's make the sensitivity be moderate. We don't want it to be really weak or strong. We'll just have it set to moderate. So now that we have our accelerometer set, it's time to program our accelerometer. Okay, it's telling us we kicked out. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Let's go ahead and add now an accelerometer box. And we're going to scroll down here to accelerometer, and we want it to be shaking. So if you remember, some of you did this with a tutorial app that we made at the beginning of the quarter or semester. So let's go ahead and use that knowledge we learned way back then to create an accelerometer. So in our accelerometer, we're going to want to have what things happen. It says that we want to have a new phrase appear. We want to have the score go up and update the score label. Well, good thing for us, we've created some procedures that are already going to do every single one of those things. So the one we can go in here and do, the one that says a new phrase appears, is picking phrases. We can drop that in there. And now when we shake it, a new word or phrase should show up right there. And then the other thing we needed to do is increment the score. So we need the score to go up. So let's add that increment score. And then we also need the score label, it said, to also increase. So we created that as another call. So now if we put those things in there, as long as they all work, we can check off our entire event handler. I'm going to highlight it because I feel pretty confident already. So let's see how successful we were. I'm going to close the app on my tablet. I'm going to refresh the page here. I'm going to open up the Connect AI Companion. I'm going to pull my tablet out. QR code. We're going to have it do its thing. And let's see if it shows up here on the tablet. Oh, thank goodness. So let's check all our stuff that we have on our game right now. The start timer is one of the first things we did. Start timer. That still starts the clock. Reset timer should just reset the timer itself. Let's test to make sure it just does reset timer. Remember, if we skip next word or phrase, we're going to lose points. And it's going to show a word. So if I hit reset timer, the only thing that changes is the clock. To reset the game, we got to click everything. Now, we did click here for word or phrase that if we click that, that's going to show us a new word, but we made sure that it didn't add a point. So that's good. Now, the only way that we're going to add the point is on the shake. So as I shook it, you see a new word came up, eating a fillet of fish, and number of correct guesses was 1. I'm going to shake it again, and everything seems to be working pretty good the way we want it to. Reset the game. Okay, so everything seems to be going pretty well. Now, the one thing I want us to be able to do is we do want to go back to this button and just have it as a additional start timer. So let's say we want to start the game, but we want to do it when the word shows up. Okay, we could click start timer, but that's just going to start the clock down. If I want to start where I click start timer and a word pops up, there's 2 different things we can add now that we have the procedure set up. We could go to the word phrases button that we created. And in the word phrase, we did do an increment score. Does anyone know why the score didn't show up here? Okay, if you caught on, the reason it doesn't show up is we didn't update the score label. So if we want to put increment score there, we're going to have to put a score label. So let's say that's an option we have. So let's take that out. Let's get rid of the score label. The only way we want it to add a point right now is in the accelerometer. But what I want to do with the word phrase is I want it to be able to start the app. So what we can do here is we can go down to the clock and we can grab a timer enabled. And let's say when we click the word phrase button, we have a timer enabled set to true. Now what's that going to do? Well, that's going to be able to start the game and it's going to show us a word. I like this because then you can start the game right away. Okay? If you start the game right there, it's going to show us the word, right? We didn't add a point, but if I scroll this a little bit more, look what happened right away. It started the clock. So now we have 2 different ways of starting the clock. Start timer, and that's if you're going to do just another word, or you can go ahead and click here to start a new word. Okay, so now we have multiple ways of doing this. I'll click refresh. I can shake it. And on the shake, we don't want it to start the timer because we just want it to be able to get points. So now we have the app working exactly the way it needs to. Now you can have fun playing the charades game, and this is something you can do at home as well. Now remember, we can always go back on here. I don't know if I displayed all the fun stuff I was doing. We can always go back on here, and we can always add more items to the list, be able to play the game. You can always add more and play with people. But now we have the game set. So if I want to start the game and play against you, I can go ahead and go start. Now, I'm going to act out in front of my partner the movie about the Blues Brothers. So I would have to act it out, and if the person gets it right, I'll shake it. All right, I got my point, and now I have to act out Daniel Bryan. All right, I'll point my fingers up in the air, doing the yes movement, and they get it, and I'll go, okay, I'll shake it, and another word comes up. And if they don't get this one, they'll go next. Now my score went down to 1, and I'll have to act this out. If they don't know, I'll say next. And now we lose points. And it's -1 because when the timer went out, we lost the point as well. So then the other team would be able to go. So that's how it works. Have fun playing the game. Have fun getting the rest of this to work the way you want it to. Do a little housekeeping. Make sure it works all properly. And then before you're done with class, make sure you get this checked off by your teacher that everything is working the exact way it's supposed to. And then make sure you do the conclusion question. The conclusion question is going to have you look at a whole bunch of different blocks that are created for something else, and you have to be able to identify what is the program actually programmed to do. So what are the actions going to allow for the program to do? So good luck with that one. And that's it for our lesson. You now have a fun new charades game you can play with family and friends. See you next time.